Today, we have the Catholic Church being called the original pyramid scheme in an article from Medium. Let's talk about it.
We're Ted and Lisa, and we are NPCs, nonprofit consultants. A better world needs healthier nonprofits, and on this channel, our focus is showing how leaders can do better and be better.
Now, most of us have a pretty strong reaction to two specific phrases: pyramid scheme and Catholic Church. And this article hits both of those in a way that's really interesting and worth examining.
All right, for context, the author of this article is from Ireland, and he states that he started questioning the Catholic Church from a very young age. It was the question, with all these different religions, how can we all be right? And from what it sounds like, that question was not answered in a way that actually answered his question. And so he continued to grow, and as he grew into adulthood, he started a job that kind of got this whole article going. It says, I'm unfortunate enough to have done door-to-door sales in my lifetime.
I'm unfortunate enough.
It was for a few months selling house alarms. I caught myself rather lucky because despite many people believing that door-to-door salespeople are among the worst in the planet, which is actually a pretty fair... I mean, I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying he wrote this accurately. I was selling peace of mind and got to meet some great people on Ireland's back roads. I made some good money, gained some great sales experience, and moved on. So this kind of gives the context of he went from questioning church to growing up, doing door-to-door sales. And in door-to-door sales or any sales positions, you learn a lot about people, humanity, different ideas, what works, what doesn't work.
Communication, sometimes a little bit of like manipulation. You start to figure out how to kind of massage relationships in a way that can work better for your favor. I can see kind of where this article is going.
I also got to learn about pyramid schemes. Now, a pyramid scheme is an unsustainable business model where one person recruits two more people who then in turn recruit two more people, or at least it's said, just go recruit two more people. This goes on and on with new recruits generating revenue for those further up the chain. This often is referred to as an MLM or multi-level marketing. Now, right now, I'm just going to let you know if you're in an MLM or multi-level marketing and you're shouting at your screen, we are not a pyramid scheme. We're not going to get into that's not what we're doing today. After seeing how these business models work, my jaw hit the floor. The similarities between the pyramid scheme approach and the Catholic Church are stunning.
He says recruitment is the giveaway. That he's drawing that connection, that recruitment is the thing that makes it all come together.
Now, that very well could be the case. I understand where he's coming from with this article. When you are looking at how a business model is set up where it's all recruitment focused, and then you're looking at something like an organized religion that you don't necessarily believe in the religion, and you see that religion going out and trying to get more people to join the religion, that seems to be a fair connection. I mean, I'm not going to say I agree with the connection, but it seems to be a fair connection how someone would say they both recruit, and I'm seeing how this is very beneficial for the people at the top. And because of natural org structures, pretty much every organization structure kind of looks like a pyramid. And so it becomes something like I kind of see where he's coming from with this, given his background and what like the lens that he's viewing this through.
So what does recruitment mean for a church versus a pyramid scheme versus a nonprofit? And how are they similar or different? This is what we want to really unpack.
Yes. So recruitment for a church is interesting because assuming that the people in the church actually believe the religion that they're following, they wouldn't necessarily call it recruitment. They're more calling it like evangelizing.
Or conversion.
They're going out saying, if this is truly what we believe will save the souls of people, of course we want to get as many people into the religion as possible. Of course we want to tell as many people as possible, hope that they join, and hope that their families join, and that it grows over time, which makes sense because, you know, if someone truly believes that someone's soul is on the line, it's not kind to not tell people
there's
that
that
they think
famous,
it's an issue.
That famous video with Penn Jillette saying, like, I don't believe in religion, but I understand that if you actually do, you are like the worst person in the world if you don't evangelize. If you don't, like, if you actually think someone is going to go to hell and then you just let them, you're terrible. So, like, I understand that even if you don't necessarily believe in it, you got to look at it and say, if people do believe in it, they do have a certain set of responsibilities that they probably are going to take on and say, this is important, important enough to go and tell people about and kind of bring people into the fold.
Yeah. Now, a pyramid scheme, or how in this one, he's kind of lumping a whole bunch of different business types together. With that, recruitment takes on a very different meaning in that the person who's trying to bring people in is trying to do it in hopes that someone will take off and help them achieve financial goals. You might be saying that's not different than a church. People are coming in hoping that like they're going to tithe more or give more. If I am assuming the best about the people who are leading the church, who truly believe what they're saying, ultimately the financial goals that money is moved into expanding the reach and actually being able to evangelize or convert more people.
Yeah, and this is why it's so important that the nonprofit structures are there, so that way there's that accountability there. Because yeah, if the money is just flowing in, it could work like a pyramid scheme because no one knows where it's going. But that's where it's so important to have really great systems and structures in place as a nonprofit, so you have that transparency. Because that's one of the things that is not necessarily easy to find in a pyramid scheme is transparency. How does the money flow? Like, how does it actually work? There's always fine print, and there's always all these little things that if you really want to figure out what's going on, you have to do a lot of digging. And in a nonprofit, we want to make that as easy to see as possible. So that way we're building trust with the people that we're working with.
Right. And when we hear people in MLMs or different companies that are trying to recruit for that financial aspect of it and trying to get people who are then going to bring in customers versus people who are going to actually say, this is how I'm spending my time. It's an interesting, I've heard the phrase like some will, some won't. So what next? And it's kind of this almost a heartless phrase while understanding the percentages of the people who are actually going to engage. I don't think it's meant to be as heartless as it sounds, but they're like, we just understand that if we talk to X number of people, this percentage is going to do something, this percentage isn't. And so we just need to run the numbers and run the play. And as someone who was a door-to-door salesman, he understands these numbers because even being in sales, whatever type of sales it is, whether you're a 1099 contractor or you're working for a business as an inside sales rep, there are still the percentages. You still know what's a good list. You still know what's a good contact rate. You still know what's a good conversation rate and what the conversion rate is and then what the close rate is. If you are in sales, you know those statistics. And so that's one of those things where recruitment is pushed really, really, really hard, not necessarily because they actually think that everyone coming in is going to get involved, but because they understand that they have to run the numbers in order to meet whatever quota that they have set for themselves.
And I've heard it said too in sales conversations that sales is simply just a transferal of belief. And in the nonprofit, especially in the church world, what are you trying to do? You're trying to have a transferal of belief. I believe this. Let's talk about how you might want to believe the same thing. So in a sense, yes, like sales is happening. These things do have a lot of crossover, but we have to figure out is like what actually separates them, what makes them different.
Yeah. And this really goes back to that really core belief. Now, in a business model, that sales process, ultimately the core why behind doing it is going to be for a financial reason. Even though with the work that he was doing, selling alarm systems, that still had more benefit in terms of personal safety and security to a family than possibly a different avenue. Ultimately, if he wasn't working money doing it, if he wasn't making money doing it, he probably wouldn't be working for that company.
Right.
Now, on the other side, we know plenty of churches and church leaders who are willing to go out and talk about faith, meet with people, help them understand faith, and go through all these conversations. And sometimes those people never even grace the doors of their church and end up going to somewhere else altogether. And those leaders, when their heart is to actually help people in that capacity, they're not upset that they went with a different church instead of my church. They're not upset that their money is being given somewhere else instead of where mine is. Now, it doesn't mean that every church leader is like that, and that doesn't mean that every church structure is like that. But we have to go back to what that fundamental thing is that's causing the similar visible thing, the similar visible action. So just because something is recruiting doesn't mean that the motivation for it is the same across all these different things.
Right. The military recruits, colleges recruit, pretty much any business or any organization that's looking to grow has to have some sort of recruitment process. And maybe it's not called recruitment, but it's not necessarily fair to say if something is recruiting, it's a pyramid scheme. Because then everything's a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, I recruited him to be my husband.
Oh, this marriage is a pyramid scheme. Also, we recruited our 3 children.
I don't think
No, it doesn't work like that.
Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that nonprofits can't do better. When it comes to recruiting in the nonprofit sector, whether or not it is a church or a nonprofit that's doing something else in the community, it's very important that recruiting is happening, but the way that recruiting is happening needs to be done in a way that is very transparent, very clear in what they're hoping for, and very clear so that the people who are coming in, it's not like a bait and switch. It's not coming for one thing and now you're getting something else. Sometimes I think that nonprofits see what's happening in business and take some of those principles and say, okay, we can use that here. We can get people in with a good offer. You can join and be a part of community, but then we're going to upsell them and you can volunteer 10 hours a week every single week for the rest of your life. Like, I think that there are times that we see something that seems to work in the business sector and we try and translate it into nonprofit and don't realize that the values that's being exchanged isn't the same. When you're exchanging money, it's just a different conversation. And the way that everything works around that exchange is different than when you are really exchanging trust and building trust and cashing in on how much trust that someone has with you. And I don't mean cashing in a terrible way. I have cared about you now for 6 months, so you owe me a favor sort of way. I'm just saying that if we have spent the time to build up trust, we want to be careful that we are not treating that trust as something that's really cheap and easy to attain a second time.
Right.
And so that's the area where recruitment within nonprofits needs to be done in a way that is incredibly transparent, very straightforward, and first and foremost, looking out for the benefit of the people who are coming to us in our nonprofit, even if they're the ones who are going to be helping us and partnering with us as volunteers or as leaders within our organization.
Or donors.
Now,
when we saw this article, a couple things popped up in our mind right away because we also see some similarities between pyramid schemes or MLMs or businesses and churches that aren't healthy. And we, like we said, we want to make sure that as nonprofits, we're doing better. As leaders, we're doing better. So we want to talk about a couple of these things, maybe have a chuckle, but also figure out how can we not do these things. The first one is love bombing.
Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how many people have started at a nonprofit as a volunteer and the leader of the nonprofit is just like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I can't believe you're here. You're just so wonderful. Let's go grab coffee. Let's get to know each other. And then once that leader feels like they are in, the leader's like, okay, I don't have time for you anymore. Just get your stuff done, please. Like, it's crazy, but this is something that we have heard about often in other business models where the new person comes in and they're just overwhelmed by the number of people who are absolutely excited that they're there. And then in a very short amount of time, it's like a faucet was turned off. And once it seems like they got involved enough, they don't need to be cared for in that way. And that's what's called love bombing. It's just this I don't want to say overindulgence, over something of just this crazy, we just love you so incredibly much here. And you have found your home and you have found your place and we are your people and we will forever be your people and we just love you.
Yeah, it's like an emotional fishing where it's like, okay, now we set the hook so they can't get off the hook now. So now we don't have to invest that kind of relationship or care in them anymore because they're stuck. Mm-hmm. They're stuck here for whatever reason. And so as nonprofit leaders, we really need to think through, like, if we are going to start a relationship one way, we need to be prepared and have systems in place to continue and have the capacity to move that forward. Because sometimes it happens by accident. That's just true. Sometimes you are really excited. Someone came and joined your volunteer team and you're really pumped about it and you let them know and you want to get to know them and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden there's a new person that you have to spend a little bit of time and focus on. And this person's kind of left in the dust. This is why it's really important to make sure that you have systems for care and infrastructure within relationships, because nonprofits are all about trust and relationships. And if you can make sure that from the ground up, you're building your nonprofit in a way that says, hey, we need 10 new volunteers. That means we want to make sure that they can all be cared for well and feel like they're part of a team, not being left out in the dust after the first couple months. Then you're going to actually recruit differently, and you're going to go out and you're going to grab more people to be a part of what you're doing in a healthy way that is sustainable and makes people feel like they didn't just care for me for a month and then let go, but they actually care about my success and my growth as a human long term.
Yeah, now the second one is the phrase, your why should make you cry. Now, right away, Ted's going to say, I don't disagree with this, though.
Your why should make you cry. I mean, if you have a good why for your life or your calling or whatever it might be, it probably should hit you in the heart a little bit.
Now, with that, what we see or in like nonprofits is during that love bombing period, there's a lot of, hey, let me get to know you. Let me hear you everything. Why are you here? Tell me your story. Tell me your why. And the phrase, your why should make you cry. A lot of the issue that I have behind that isn't whether or not I agree with the phrase itself, but it's how it's used after leadership has found out what your why is. And so what we'll see is leaders who get highly invested, want to figure out why you're there, what it is that you deeply care about the most, so that when you come to a point where you're either not doing what they want you to be doing, or you're needing to step away from something for a bit, or you just don't seem as motivated to do the next thing, they can pull that out and say, I know what your why is, though. And your why is whatever it is. Your why is to help your kids. And our organization allows you to help your kids. So if that's really your why, of course you're going to help, right? And it's this weird thing that I don't think leaders consciously do it, but we see it when leaders start out going way too hard on the, I'm going to build a bunch of really strong, big relationships really quick, suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I can't sustain this. And then the person starts to withdraw because there's been a change in relationship and they pull for the easiest card that they can find. And it happens to be the why card. And this isn't fair to the volunteers that we're bringing in, to the donors that we're bringing in, or to the people that we're trying to help. This is something that really degrades trust, not necessarily right away, because sometimes the recruit will look and just say, oh my gosh, they remembered. Like they remember who I am. They do actually care.
Yeah, they remember what matters to me.
Bring them in for just a little bit more. But eventually, when that stops working, it erodes. It doesn't just erode trust. It like burns the bridge. Like there is no coming back from it once someone's eyes are open and they see how you are using that as a tool to get them to do what you want them to do as a leader. And so really what we need to be doing as leadership is, yes, figuring out the whys for our people, but not adjusting the whys according to the actions that we want them to take, but actually figure out what their whys are and asking, how can we support you in making that happen? And is there a way within our organization that we can use the opportunities here, the community here, the mentors here, the people here, in order to help you build the life that you want in partnership as we are all building our community to be better, stronger, and healthier?
If you found this interesting, we have another story of a nonprofit that actually asked their job candidates to lowball their own salary through prayer. We'll see you over in that video.